Those first few weeks after having a baby, being postpartum, they are something else. We are overwhelmed, emotional, happy, sad sometimes, and navigating this new journey of life is something that you can only really understand when you go through it. So if you're in that right now, or if you've recently gone through that, then this video is for you. I am now 5 months down the line, and I wish I had done things maybe a bit differently. I mean, it's all a learning process, but a little bit differently. I wish I'd known a couple of things, and I just want to share a really honest video that I would literally share with my friend who had just given birth, on how I would have handled things and a real insight to the reality of being a new mum. This is just one mum sharing to another mum. I'm no expert, but it's just my honest opinion on my journey, and hopefully it can help you as well. I've written some notes in my phone, so I'm going to be kind of looking at it while I'm talking to you so I don't forget things. So the first thing I wrote down was visitors. I'm an expat, so this is probably slightly different for me. If you live in your hometown where you come from, then you can have people come and visit and then leave. Whereas we had people come and stay with us in our house for like weeks on end. So that's just how we did it. And I wrote here, having someone in your space during such a vulnerable time is really tricky. And despite perhaps receiving some help, and of course the intentions are good, it can often burst that newborn bubble. So I wrote down, ask for help, but don't be afraid to ask for it in your way. Many people might think taking the baby away from mum while mum does other things is helping, but actually that can be the opposite. Like, I wanted to be super close to Sophia. I didn't find it helpful, people taking her away, and then she starts to cry and they're trying to settle her, and your emotions and your hormones are all over the place, and you feel like, I felt very like agitated during that time when people were taking her away from me. And again, I respect and appreciate people trying to help. It's just sometimes they're not helping in the way that you might find helpful. So don't be afraid to ask. You know, I want to go and lay down with my baby, or I want to lay on the sofa with my baby. Can you perhaps do this? At the end of the day, visitors are there to see the baby, but they're also there to help mum, and they should respect that in a way. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask for help in a way that you find helpful, not in a way that they think they're helping you, if that makes sense. I say this with all kindness, and of course we're grateful for people coming to help. Of course we're grateful for people who want to be there to support you, but they do have to remember they are there to support mum. This is one that maybe not everybody experiences, but I definitely experienced during postpartum, and I still have the odd day here and there as well. But my baby was very much wanted. I was very much looking forward to being a mum, and of course I had like doubts of if I'll be a good mum and all those kind of things. So overwhelmed. I was so happy to be having my own family and giving this baby, and just I felt so grateful. But there were moments where I was literally like, I've made the worst mistake of my life. I can't do this. I was even going to Roberto, my partner, and I was having breakdowns, crying, saying like, I don't think I'm supposed to be a mum. And I was doubting myself. And maybe people will say like, how can you say that about your daughter? She is absolutely wanted, and I can't believe I was like almost having those thoughts. But it's just a reality of you feel very consumed, you feel very overwhelmed. Your hormones are like this. 1 minute I was like happy, crying with happy tears, and then the next minute I was crying with sadness because I felt like I just ruined my life and ruined my relationship. And that's just me being completely honest. That doesn't take away from the fact that I love my daughter so much, and it's not the biggest mistake I've ever made, and it hasn't ruined my relationship. But when you're in those first couple of weeks, you might genuinely believe that. I genuinely believed that I had made a mistake, but that was just the overwhelm, the overtiredness. You're in the thick of your emotion, your hormones doing a lot of things, and that's just genuinely how I felt. And if you're feeling like that, you're not alone, and it does get better. Of course, I am not a therapist or a medical professional, but if it doesn't get better, then of course you can go and seek professional help. But just from my own opinion, those first couple of weeks I was probably crying every day over something. Like the tiniest thing could make me cry, even nothing could make me cry. And if you're having those moments, just know that it can get better, and if it doesn't, you can always seek professional help. Breastfeeding. If you have chosen to do this, it's something that I chose to do, and it isn't working out, or you feel like it isn't working out in the most natural way that people portray, then it's okay. I had the incorrect latch with my baby. I was crying while I was feeding her. It was honestly horrific. Like, I went through 2 weeks of torture because I wasn't latching her properly and she was crying. I was crying. It was just very uncomfortable. I was in so much pain. So just give yourself grace. It takes time to work out. Maybe you'll have the correct latch from the beginning and you'll have no issues whatsoever. But if you're someone who's sitting there thinking, I don't even know how this is gonna work, I feel like giving up, blah, 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 blah. I had so much pain that I was thinking, I don't know how I'm gonna push through this, but I'm so glad that I listened to my intuition, like knowing that I can do it, and I wanted to push through it. Again, my own opinion, my own journey. Just know that it can get better. It does get better, and now I can't imagine myself not breastfeeding, if that makes sense. Like, it was just, I'm glad that I give myself patience and grace during that time, because it's not as easy as people may make out. When your baby cries, it might feel like your heart is breaking. Like, I genuinely felt like my heart was being ripped outside of my body when my baby was crying, especially in those first couple of weeks in the hospital when the nurses were like trying to do things to her. I was crying while she was crying, and luckily my partner was there to try and manage the situation for me, to remove me from the situation. He was telling me, like, I will take her, you just go and distract yourself with something else. And that was the best thing that he could have done, because I was getting so, I don't know whether it's a hormonal thing, a motherly instinct thing, just you're protecting your baby. I don't know what it is, but it's very overwhelming. And I didn't know that I was going to feel like that, you know. I knew as a mum that I might not like to hear the sounds of my baby crying, but I didn't feel like it just felt like it was taking over my whole body. I couldn't control myself, and I couldn't control my tears at all. I was sobbing listening to her crying. There's one example that I had in the hospital where I think it was like 3 days after birth, we had to go in for a check, and they took her blood to check her blood type. I don't think this happens everywhere, because I've talked to friends about it and it didn't happen to them. But for us, they tried to take her blood, and they were first trying to prick the bottom of her feet and then her hands, and she was screaming, crying. Roberta was holding her, and I was just having my heart broken, and I wish I had taken action there. In the end, he told me to go away, but if I had known, or if I had had a bit more confidence in the situation, you're a new mum, you're so vulnerable, but if I had known better, I would have either nursed her while they were doing it, hold her while they were doing it, do something as her mum while they were trying to do it. They were not helpful in any way. They didn't suggest any of this, but I also just didn't act on my instincts. I should have just taken her and been like, hey, I'm in control here. You might need to do X, Y, and Z, but I am going to help the situation. So just know that you have more control than you think you do, and it's your baby. So if you're not comfortable with something, you can take action and you can follow your gut instinct. I doubted my gut instinct a lot in those first couple of days and weeks, and I wish I had listened to it more. Resentment towards your partner. I have a very strong relationship. We have gone through many things together as a couple, ups and downs, and I would consider us a very, very strong couple. However, there were moments, and we still have our days now, I still have my days, where the resentment can build up towards them. Especially, again, I go back to those first couple of weeks because they're so vulnerable. For both of you, but more so for mum, because we are the ones with the hormonal change, drastic changes. I think it's important to remember that the resentment that you might build up towards them is quite normal. Not that many people talk about it, but I was like lying in bed at like 3 o'clock in the morning. I chose to exclusively breastfeed my baby, and my partner was lying in bed next to me, and while I was looking at him sleeping while I was feeding her at like 3 o'clock in the morning, night after night, I was building up this like resentment, like how can you just be in such a deep sleep while I'm facing this? And that was my choice to do that. Again, everybody's situations and reasons are different and unique to you, but the resentment was building up and I wasn't really talking about it. And I wrote down here, one thing I learned is that keeping tabs on like who's done what is not healthy. Examples that I was throwing at Roberta were like, I've changed this many nappies today, you've not done that many, and I was just keeping tabs on what I've done, what you've done, and it wasn't healthy. And I do have my days now where I feel like I've taken on most of the load. I do think having healthy conversations around, if you feel like the partner, you need more help and you need help in this area, I think it's more than keeping tabs on each other. It's more just having open communication and like not allowing the resentment to build up, because when it builds up and then you just have an explosion, that's happened to me, then it's just not healthy for the relationship. I just think open communication, like, hey, I need help here, rather than assuming that your partner knows that you're needing help, extra help on that particular moment. Because I was often thinking like, he just knows and he's ignoring and he's not doing it. Well, maybe just communicate and say, hey, I need you to do this. I wrote here, for example, when I was breastfeeding, I asked my partner to help at night by giving her a bottle. In my head, I felt like it was fair for him to pitch in because I was doing most of the night feedings, but in practice, she wouldn't want to take the bottle, and I'd hear him moving around and shuffling and doing things, and that was actually even stressing me out even more than if I had just got up and do it myself. I'd end up getting up anyway, feeling more frustrated than if I had just done it myself. What I realized is it wasn't necessarily about the bottle, it's just that I wanted him to help in some way, wanted him to take like some sort of responsibility. I almost like was trying to, maybe I shouldn't say this, but maybe I was trying to like punish him in a way to like, you know, you should also wake up, you should do things too. So instead of following that path, which was quite toxic and not really helpful, I found other ways for him to support me, like asking him to do bath time or cleaning up after dinner. Or sometimes I think it's just best to figure out what works for you as a couple, rather than trying, again, it comes down to like keeping tabs on each other. It's not helpful. I am quite a structured routine, I don't want to say organized person, but I like things to be a certain way. And of course, when you have a baby, those things go out the window. And I think it's important to remember that it's okay to not have any structure, no routine. If you haven't done your hair, it's okay. If you haven't cleaned up the dishes from the last meal, it's okay. It's okay if your house is upside down, if you're all over the place, if you haven't got yourself together, especially like those first couple of weeks. I've had friends tell me like, I just don't feel like myself, I don't feel like I've got, you know, myself organized, or the house is, you've just had a baby, you've just given birth to a human being, you've just done something so life-changing, especially for your first baby. You're not supposed to have things together. You're not supposed to have routine or structure or be presentable in any way. Just go with the flow, give yourself grace. That's like my favorite saying after birth, is literally give yourself grace, give yourself a break, and just listen to your instincts, follow your baby, and you can't go far wrong. Your baby just cares that you're near them, that you're feeding them, obviously, and that you're changing their bum. And that's pretty much it. They just need love and food, and everything else can wait. Every baby is different, so whatever advice you have received, unsolicited or not, you know best. You know your baby best, even if you're a new mum, because I was thinking like, I'm a new mum though, and like this mum of 3 is giving me advice, so she obviously knows more than me. Not necessarily. She knows her babies more than you, and she knows what works for her babies. She doesn't know what works for your baby. Yes, there's some advice out there that can help. Like, I'm giving you advice now, but you can take it with a pinch of salt, because again, your situation is different. You know your baby best, you know yourself best, and you know, at the end of the day, you're gonna make the best choices for you. And I think that's what it comes down to. Even if you've never had a baby before, your intuition is almost always right, and it's there for a reason. You're connected to your baby, so listen to that first, I'd say, above everything else. Sometimes I've taken advice from somebody else and gone against my own instinct as a mother, and it hasn't worked out. So take everyone's advice with a pinch of salt and follow your gut. Try to celebrate small things and see the positives. I wish at the time that I had just appreciated the small things more. Looking back, they were really beautiful things like waking. I know this sounds crazy to some people, especially if you're in the middle of doing this and you're having no sleep, but when the house is quiet and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and it's you and your baby, and you're just looking at this little human and they might be looking up at you, and it's just you two in that moment, and that is very beautiful. I know when you're tired that doesn't sound very beautiful, but I was trying to find moments of peace and calm, like especially if I couldn't sleep directly after. Sometimes you can't sleep straight away after putting your baby back, so I'd find like a nice book that resonated with me on my Kindle, and I might read for like 15 minutes before falling back asleep, or I might read while she's nursing, just having that quiet time to yourself. I wrote here, those moments will be a memory someday. If your baby slept longer than they usually do, that's a small win. If you took a shower in the morning, that's another win. Like, I remember going days of like, I haven't even showered today, I haven't done this, I haven't done that. It's the small things. Like if I managed to do a bit of skincare, literally 2 minutes, I'm like, that's a win. If I managed to drink my coffee while it's hot, that's another win. And I think it's just about appreciating the moments, because you're doing the most important job, in my opinion, of your life. Ways to feel like you. Feeling like you is so important. Take care of yourself first. I found that even taking a 2-minute shower, putting skincare, putting a bun, like putting my hair in a bun rather than have it like scraggly and all over the place, and then I'm sweating because of breastfeeding makes you sweat and hot and bothered. Just put your hair in a bun. It takes 2 seconds, literally just like throw it up in a bun, brush it, put it back, and put a bit of like moisturizer on, and that already made me feel so much better. It sounds silly, but when you take those couple of minutes to yourself, I felt different. So I would advise anyone to just take a couple of minutes, put some fresh clothes on every day, even if you're wearing pajamas every day for those first couple of weeks. Put a new fresh pair of pajamas on, ask somebody else to do the laundry, or put like another t-shirt on. Don't keep wearing the same dirty clothes day after day. Just put like a fresh pair on, even if they are pajamas and you're in pajamas days on end, but they're fresh and you feel better. This might sound cheesy and obvious, but I remember we had an osteopath come to do a session with me and Sophia individually. One, because she had some gut issues, so she had a session, then I had a session afterwards. And while she was doing it to me, and I'm a keen meditator, like I've meditated for years, I have experience with breath work. And I remember we were lying on the bed here, and she did something, and she was like, okay, take a big breath in. And I did, and she was like, no, like a bigger breath, like a proper breath, like really take it all in and let it all out. And I did, and she was like, when was the last time you took a breath? Sophia's just waking up. When was the last time you took a big breath? And I was like, probably in labor. Probably in labor, when I was trying to manage my contractions, was the last time I took a big breath. So I found helpful when I'm breastfeeding, or if you're given the bottle, just take that time while they're feeding to take a couple of big, deep breaths for yourself. Again, I don't need to go into the science of it. I'm sure you know the benefits of taking deep breaths and how it can literally change your brain. So it's important. And I reminded myself that when I'm feeding her, I have to take a couple of breaths. Also the same for when I'm feeding her, I drink water. She's hydrated, I'm hydrated. Put in yourself first. Instagram is not real. We all run to Instagram to flick through things, and some things out there are actually real and relatable, but the majority of it is nonsense, it's set up, it's false, and it's not reality. So don't compare yourself to what people upload on social media. Real life is not Instagram, and you are doing great as a mother. The feeling of making it through the night when the sun comes up is normal as a new mum, and it'll pass. The same feeling of when it comes to like bedtime in those early days, and I started to get like anxious of like, oh God, like another night, how is this gonna go? How many hours of sleep am I gonna get if I'm lucky? How many minutes of sleep am I gonna get? All those like fears coming down as the sun was going down. Just know that it passes, it gets better. Of course, not every baby sleeps amazingly. Sophia, luckily, we are quite blessed. She sleeps now 8 to 12 hours through the night, which is amazing, and I'm very grateful. But in those early days it wasn't like that. But just know it passes, it gets better, and your baby will learn to sleep better by themselves. How to set boundaries for unsolicited advice, or advice that you just didn't ask for. and you don't really know what to respond to. So your hormones are everywhere and you'll cry. It's okay. Allow yourself to. Don't build it up. Like I had days of letting it build up because I felt silly for constantly crying, but let it out because of course your baby will pick up on your energy. If you receive advice that doesn't sit well with you, there are a few things you can do depending on your preferences. I smiled and nodded a couple of times, especially when it's from people who I probably won't discuss my baby with. I won't have deep discussions about my life, or I wouldn't run to for advice. I'm probably not going to continue these conversations with them. I see them now and then. I just let it go. I think having a baby has really changed me for the better in terms of, I was quite not afraid to speak my mind in most scenarios, and now I've come to realize like sometimes you're talking to a brick wall with many people, and times change. You again will just follow your own instincts in most cases, but people love to make comments on the decisions you've made and make judgments and whatever. You don't need to entertain it. I just let things go. I don't want to let it into my positive bubble. I don't want to let your bad experience or your this or your that into my zone. If I wouldn't go to that person for life advice, and this may be controversial, I probably wouldn't go to them for parenting advice. So again, if it's that kind of person, I just most of the time smiled, nodded, didn't really go further into the conversation. However, if it is someone you're going to be spending more time with and around them more often, then you may need to start saying things, because you don't want them to repeat and repeat and repeat and think that they can just continue to give you this advice that you don't want to hear. I would say things like, thank you so much, but we're doing it this way. Or thank you so much, but I'm trying to figure it out on my own. Or thank you so much, but we've decided on this. For example, I do not want to sleep train. I do not want to let my baby cry it out under any circumstances. I have made my own decision off of my own research and my own choices. Other people have different opinions. You might be watching this thinking, well, I would do the complete opposite, and that's your choice, and that's absolutely fine. So I had people make comments on certain things, and again, if it's someone close to me, I'll say, great, thank you so much for sharing your experience, but we've decided this as parents. As parents, as a couple, we've decided to do it this way. That's it. Don't need to go any further into the conversation. It's really hard because people, especially with parenting, people just have so many things to say. But I think you can speak up to those people because you don't want to hear constantly the same things over and over. Usually advice comes from a good place, not a bad place, but when you're vulnerable, it can really rub you up the wrong way and even upset you. Like, I've actually cried in certain circumstances. I'd say the best thing to do is let it go unless someone is truly crossing your boundaries. Baby checklist. Now, this sounds obvious to some people, but when you're super hormonal and overtired, simple things can slip your mind. So I always referred to like this baby checklist when my baby would be upset. Not at the beginning because I was a bit all over the place, but it took some time to be like, right, is she hungry? Is she tired? Does she need her nappy changed? Is she too hot? Is she too cold? I think that's pretty much it. Is she uncomfortable where she just needs you, close by? But those 5 things are like the things that I went to the most, because honestly, sometimes when you're so tired, you're like, she must be tired, so you're trying to like nurse her or feed her to sleep or whatever, or she must have gas. Gas is another one. Then I was forgetting to like check her nappy. It sounds silly, but when you're that tired, you just forget like the most obvious things sometimes. Not every mom, before anyone's like, I could never forget, but I was forgetting in moments. So I think it's just good to like just go through a checklist of like There was one time I was in a supermarket here in Thailand, and normally the supermarkets are like full of AC and freezing, so she'd be in her normal vest from like outside, and then when we were going inside, I'd put like a blanket on her. And we're in the supermarket. I was already feeling like overwhelmed because it was one of my first times going out in public with her, and yeah, that's a whole thing. And she started like screaming, crying, and I was like, what's wrong? So I was trying to like hurry to take her out of the supermarket. As I went to pick her up, I would touch her and I was like, oh my gosh, she's boiling. That's because the AC wasn't on as strong as I realized, and I felt so guilty as a mum, thinking like she must be starving, so I was just trying to like run her out to feed her, but actually she was just too hot. So yeah, just referring to that checklist can actually just keep things a little calmer. Baby cries. Now, again, don't take my word for it. I am not a professional and you can't rely on this solely. But sometimes there were moments where my baby was like crying a little bit and I was like, what could this be? And I've run through the checklist and I'm not sure which one to like focus on. For example, is she tired? Does she really need to sleep? So there are sounds of cries online that you can listen to. Every baby's different. Before anyone gets ahead of me, every baby's different. Always follow your baby and always follow your instincts and professional advice if you need to. But in moments I was listening to these cries and I was like, actually, yeah, that does sound like this cry and she's actually tired. ChatGPT. Sophia had some tummy problems at the beginning and we were trying to establish a little bit of a routine as time was going on, and there were some things like hiccups that were preventing her from going to sleep, or you're just all over the place at the beginning, aren't you? So you're just trying to figure out what is working for her, what isn't, what temperature she likes, what she likes to wear to sleep. Does she like the white noise? Does she like to, you know, they all have preferences. Every baby's different. So while I was trying to establish any trends while being super tired, while going through the postpartum journey, I used ChatGPT to help me out. So I was writing notes in my phone, literally, as I'm reading to you these notes now, I was writing notes, blah, 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 in my phone. Little things like if she was having like a 4-hour sleep, I was like, oh, that's really good. So I would be like, right, the temperature was this on the AC, she was wearing her sleep sack and the white noise was on, for example. Or any little thing, any little thing that I was doing throughout the day, I was writing there. Because she had tummy issues at the beginning, I was like writing what I was eating, in case it was showing up in my milk and she wasn't, you know, it wasn't working for her, anything you can think of. Put all of the information in there and I asked it to tell me anything that I would find useful. And then it would just give me all of this data like, oh, when you've been eating this, your baby has been having, you know, tummy issues. Or your baby sleeps best, because I was putting all the sleep times in there as well. Your baby sleeps best when the temperature is this and they are swaddled or they are in their sleep sack. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I use that to my advantage and it really, really helped me. So I hope this has helped. This is just, again, my personal opinion, and I feel like a different person now. So if you are in the first couple of weeks after giving birth and you're like, how am I going to get through this? You'll become a better person because of it. It does get better, and I feel completely like myself again. A new version of myself, but I feel like myself again. So just know that you will get back to feeling more like you again, and it's a journey. It's a beautiful journey. I absolutely love being a mum. Like, I feel like I was born to be a mum. Like, I really do enjoy it, and at the start I didn't think I could do it. So if that contrast helps you, then great. I post more like day-to-day things on Instagram, little tips, my life here in Thailand, little routines. So if that tickles your fancy, then you can follow me on there. I hope this helped. If you've got any questions, pop them down below, and maybe I'll make another part 2 on this, or any other motherhood things that we can cover. And I'll see you in the next video.